Hello, good evening, friends. My name is Li Min. I am a campus mentor serving with Cruise Singapore, and welcome to our webinar, How Would Jesus Use Social Media? This conversation is held in line with Thirst hashtag Publish Peace campaign and Cruise hashtag Ready Equipping series. Now, let me tell you a little bit about each of them. In a nutshell, hashtag Publish Peace is a campaign to inspire every believer to share their testimony on social media under that hashtag. And throughout this whole year, Thirst and Salt and Light will also be publishing stories about the goodness of God that transforms lives. Now, the hashtag Ready campaign, which stands for Reaching Everyone Around You, seeks to activate and empower every young adult to share Christ. So they have held a series of 5 webinars since January and are right now running a Telegram channel until Easter with resources to help people begin to share their faith. Now you can find the articles and recorded webinars on Thirst and Cruise respective websites, YouTube channels, and Instagram pages. But as you can tell, Thirst and Crew have a common desire to mobilize and equip the body of Christ. That's you and me to take a bold step and talk about our faith in Jesus, both in person and on digital spaces. So tonight, we want to talk about how to use social media boldly and winsomely. What can I share? What should I not share? What are some creative ways to use it and how may they be received? So to help us, we've got a unique lineup of speakers. There's renowned apologist Sean McDowell from the United States, Edric Sung, editor of the Thirst Collective, Cornelius Sim, a young working professional in the marketplace, Shanice Tan, a graduating student from SMU, and Jerome Wee, a year 3 student from NYP. So we've got a wide representation of ages tonight, from the young to the young at heart, and I believe that the collective wisdom will make our time tonight very rewarding. Now, before we jump in and hear from our first speaker, Sean McDowell, allow me to make a couple of very quick announcements. So first up, we'll be having a 20-minute Q&A in the midpoint of this webinar. If you have a question, you may submit it anytime through the Q&A function in the Zoom. You may also upvote questions you want to see answered, so do browse through the questions submitted. We may not be able to go through every single one, but we promise to go through as many as time allows. Now, the second one, as a tangible action step that you can take following this webinar, you may want to consider joining an upcoming event called Digital Day of Outreach. Now, this is an actual in-person session to experience intentional digital outreach together. It's happening on 16 April, which is next Saturday, from 9:30 a.m. to 12 noon at Crew Center. The sign-up link can be found in the Zoom chat. It's crew.sg/readyDDO1. Our desire is to champion intentional gospel conversations on social media over the Easter weekend. So by the end of this webinar, if you feel stirred to move to action and want an easy starting place with guidance provided, we invite you to join us for the Digital Day of Outreach. Now we are ready to hear from Sean McDowell. He's not actually here with us live tonight, but he has very thoughtfully pre-recorded his message for us to share how he believes Jesus would use social media, the platforms Sean personally uses and why, and he also gives us practical tips on how to be more effective at using social media today. Let's watch it.
How can you become a winsome apologist on YouTube? This is a great question, and one I hope to offer some insights from things I've learned along the way, including a lot of mistakes, to help you equip believers and engage non-believers through the medium of social media. As we start, realize I don't pretend to have this all figured out. I am in process. There's people who do this much better than I do, but here's some lessons I've learned that I hope will encourage and equip you to do apologetics and evangelism on social media. Well, let's jump in. Before we get to some practical things, really what I hope to do in this session is talk about how Jesus would use social media, talk about a little bit of the platforms that I use and why, and just give some practical tips about how to be more effective at using social media today. So let's jump in and just start with a question. Would Jesus even use social media? Now, quite obviously, we can't turn to a passage in one of the Gospels in which Jesus uses social media. That's almost so obvious, I shouldn't have mentioned it. But the question is, are there principles in the Gospels and the life of Jesus that would tell us if he might communicate this way? And if so, how Jesus might communicate? And I think there are. Now, why would I say such a thing? Well, number one, just look at the way that Jesus communicated. I've thought about writing a whole book on the communication of Jesus because it's brilliant. For example, he would go out and preach on a boat to people on the shore. Why? To project his voice. Jesus would speak on a hill. Why? That also projects his voice. In fact, when I was in Israel, we walked where the Sermon on the Mount was likely practiced, and I walked way down the hill, and I had my group stay up top, and I said, I'm going to speak in a regular voice. Can you hear me? And it echoed kind of up the hill, and a significant group of people a far amount away could hear it. So if we study the communication of Jesus, it seems that he was willing to use some of the means and mechanisms that were available his way to teach and preach and spread the gospel. So while there's a lot of questions about which social medium Jesus might use, I think it's fair to say that Jesus was eager and willing to be an effective communicator, and then we can apply some of those principles to how we think about social media. Now, how did Jesus communicate, by the way? He did a few things. And when we get to specific ways to use social media, I think you'll find that some of these overlap. Well, one thing that Jesus did primarily is he told stories. Jesus told stories. He didn't give 3-point sermons. He told stories. Have you ever really thought about why? Why did he choose to communicate that way? Well, one reason is we love stories, don't we? We love stories. We are wired in a way, I think biologically and relationally, to enjoy stories. But second, we also remember stories, don't we? One of my friends is communication professor at Biola, talked to me about how he did a study on when people listen to a message, the amount that they remember, say an hour later, 24 hours later, a week later, decreases. But the key things that people remember are stories. That's why Jesus communicated with stories. But third, stories rivet us, don't they? I mean, there's something about stories that just grab us in. When I'm speaking and giving a talk, I know that if I'm getting lost in exegesis or historical point, and I can see the audience kind of starting to fade, especially if it's students, I start to tell a story, and what happens? It's like there's this power, like the force almost, where people will turn and they'll start to focus. Stories rivet us. Even my 12th graders, when I was teaching high school Bible for years, occasionally I'd say, all right, it's story time. And I read them a story, a kid's book, actually, like the Giving Tree, which has a brilliant message behind it. And they'd sit around, and these kids actually loved it. So Jesus told stories because they rivet us. But fourth, we retell stories, don't we? When we hear a good story, we tell it to somebody else. Just think about your life and the way you've communicated in the past day or week. How many stories have you retold from other people? Chances are it's quite a few. And last, stories are persuasive. Jesus used stories because they're persuasive. They change the way we think and see the world. So when Jesus was asked the question, who is my neighbor? He doesn't explain it like, hey, your neighbor, A, B, and C. He tells a story about, of course, the Good Samaritan. That's who your neighbor is. You see, it's really interesting. When we go to watch a sermon, for example, we know someone's preaching at us, so we filter it through the sense that someone's trying to get a message across. But if we watch a movie, although it's filled with messages, what happens? Our defenses go down. Whenever somebody says, hey, let me just tell you a story, what happens? They can be persuaded and they can be influenced, but defenses go down. It seems like the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, people talked about like subliminal messages in advertising. And then we realized the science that doesn't change people. What does change people is stories. As you look at commercials, what happens? Commercials are really stories. It's not just facts about toothpaste. It's somebody using a certain toothpaste, having a good smile, and getting the job or getting the date. So Jesus told stories because stories are persuasive. And what's amazing is on different forms of social media, it's oftentimes stories. TikTok videos are quick stories. On Instagram, people tell stories. YouTube, people often use YouTube to tell a story. So when we think about social media, we're going to come back to this, but realize an effective way is to tell stories in that form, because that's how Jesus communicated. Another thing Jesus did is he asked a lot of questions, didn't he? Think about, there's over 300 questions recorded that Jesus asked. For example, perhaps one of the most important questions he said was, "Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" Jesus said, "Why does a generation seek a sign? How can Satan cast out Satan?" Even God, the Father, in Genesis, when he speaks with Adam and Eve, he asks some questions. Who told you that you were naked? He communicated with them through questions. So I think we have good reason to believe that Jesus may have used certain forms of communication, such as social media, but he would have been thoughtful, he would have been strategic in how he did so, and we're going to get into that. So how would Jesus actually use social media if he did so? Well, here's one thing I know. Jesus had a very clear mission statement. He knew who he was, and he knew why he came. Everything he did, from picking his 12 disciples, where he traveled, the stories he told, the way he communicated, was based on his mission that he came to advance and bring in the kingdom of God. So my question is, what's your mission statement for how you want to use social media? What's your goal? Now, for me, my primary goal is discipleship, with a secondary goal of evangelism. I want to disciple Christians to be grounded in their faith, and I want to model for Christians how to talk about and how to treat non-believers and how to have spiritual conversations. Whether the different social media platform, and in particular that's really on YouTube, this is what I try to model. And I probably have more Christians than non-believers engage my stuff, but quite a few non-believers do. If my primary goal was evangelism, I would probably approach things a little bit differently. I'm not saying one is better than the other. We need both. But for you, as you think about engaging social media, you might write down a mission statement or at least a bullet point. This is my audience. And I would be specific. Is it somebody in a certain country? Is it a certain age? As specific as you can be helps you when you think about posting something on social media. The question is always, does this advance my mission or not? If it doesn't, don't post it. If it does, post it. That's the best way, I think, to approach this. So start by just coming up with a mission statement. Now, for me, I talk about controversial issues, but I don't engage politics in the sense that I don't say you should vote Democrat, you should vote Libertarian, you should vote Republican. Now, I will talk about political issues that engage worldview issues. I will discuss them. So, of course, I've talked about issues of sexuality. I've had somebody on to talk about gun control. I will talk about issues. I had a guest on a while ago to talk about the environment, like those, because they're worldview issues. My goal is to approach these through a biblical lens. And so people who come to my channel know that I'm not going to try to tell them to vote a certain way. They're not going to see a post from me on Instagram. Now, are there Christians who do that? That's fine. That's between you and the Lord. I'm not telling you shouldn't do this. But my goal is to disciple Christians and to do evangelism. And so I avoid certain topics such as politics, because I think when it's all said and done, it gets in the way of me being more effective. So let's talk a little bit more what Jesus might do. I think what he would do, based on what we said earlier, is I think he'd ask a lot of questions. I actually watch Christians comment on social media. I look at posts, and more often than not, we make statements which probably make ourselves feel good. And then others will comment and say, yeah, I'm with you. And somehow it makes us feel good, but it's not as effective. I think Jesus would ask a lot of questions if he used social media. He would do a post that provokes. He would do a video that provokes. He would do some kind of social media, whatever it is, whatever the medium is, he would ask a question. Now, I think of the story of Rosaria Butterfield, who's a former, I believe she was an atheist or kind of agnostic lesbian professor. And years ago, she wrote a review of Promise Keepers and critiqued it. And almost all the responses were super positive, or some Christians were super, super critical. And a pastor wrote her a letter. And in this letter, he just asked some simple questions like, hey, I really appreciate this. So he found common ground. And then he goes, hey, here's some questions I have for you. I'm wondering why you approach it this way. How would you answer this? Can you help me understand? And Rosaria didn't quite know what to do with this. She was tempted to throw it out. She put it in a box and it just sat there for a long time. But it was the fact that he wasn't dogmatic. He just asked a question that provoked her. So I would encourage you to think about whatever social media platform you use, whether it's posting something positively, commenting on somebody else's, commenting on your own, asking questions. Ask questions to people. One reason we don't is I think we feel better by just crossing every T and dotting every I and telling people what to believe. But the question we have to ask ourselves is that the most effective way to communicate? As we talked about earlier, Jesus asked over 300 questions. How many questions have you asked recently on social media? Second thing is Jesus, I think, would engage those with a small following. When we get on social media, it's very easy to start kind of gauging people or judging people based upon the number of subscribers or followers. That can be a kind of favoritism where we treat people differently. The Bible has a lot to say about favoritism. You look in the New Testament, it's like don't treat the rich better than you do the poor, because all are made in the image of God. I think if Jesus were on social media, he wouldn't just judge people that way. He wouldn't just spend his time on those with the biggest numbers. Jesus said, leave the 99 and go to the one. So I do approach social media and I want to reach as many people as I can. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want to lose caring for individuals in the midst of how I approach social media. Now, I can't respond to every individual. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes I miss it. But I do my best to engage people on an individual level, because behind every single tweet, every single Instagram comment, even though people are anonymous at times, by the way, it's a human being. It's somebody made in the image of God. And I don't want to lose the individual if I can engage him just by looking at the numbers. I mean, look at Jesus. He engaged the poor. He cared for the sick. Children came to him, and the culture around him was like, why are you talking to children? Women. You know, the story about the woman on the road to Samaria that he cared for. People that were all, you know, the poor, the blind. The society was like, they don't have value. Don't focus on them. Our society values big numbers, big platform. Jesus wouldn't have valued people that way. So, yes, try to reach as many people as you can. But don't think if you don't have a huge platform that you're not making a significant difference. A friend of mine who had a chance to interview recently on my YouTube channel, Jonathan McClatchy, recently started a website called talkaboutdoubts.com. Now, what he does is he's put together a team of, I think, 30 or 40 leading scholars in the world. And when Christians write in and say they have doubts, he sets up Zoom calls, 30 minutes to an hour, and listens to them, tries to answer their questions, counsels them, pairs them with someone. If their doubts are in science, Dr. Stephen Meyer will take some time, if he's available, to talk with them personally. So his approach was seeing all these deconstruction stories and said, I can't stop all of them, but I'm going to reach out to the one. And he uses social media to try to draw people to this resource. So I think Jesus would engage those with a small following. Third thing Jesus would do is he would speak truth clearly and boldly. He would not hesitate to speak truth. So yes, he's compassionate. Yes, we should be winsome apologists. But Jesus also told people that were whitewashed tombs. He talked about repentance. He talked about judgment. Jesus talked a lot about hell. Now, he did it in a wise, careful way. But you could even make the case at times he wasn't being winsome when he told people, eat my flesh and drink my blood. And all these people walk away. He was kind of shocking them in a sense. Now, the way Jesus did, of course, has wisdom, and we always have to look at the context. So I think we should be winsome, but we shouldn't be winsome at the expense of speaking truth clearly and boldly. Now, for me, I talk about controversial issues. I mentioned that I don't go into politics, and that's largely because I think that will sidetrack away of the effectiveness of what I do. But I speak about issues of pro-life. I've had somebody on my YouTube channel who is an abortion survivor, and I put clips of that on all of my other social media platforms. I talk about issues related to sexuality. I talk about some controversial topics. I try to do it with grace. I try to do it with love, but I also am not going to shy away from speaking truth. Now, with that said, there's a trade-off, and you got to be careful, is on TikTok, if you directly address homosexuality in a critical way, good chance you'll be shadow banned and kicked off. It's not the case as much on Twitter, although some posts might get kind of de-emphasized. That's not the case that I've experienced on YouTube, although on YouTube it might be demonetized, so you don't get money simply from advertising. So I just try to look at those with wisdom and say, okay, is it worth getting my channel blocked on TikTok to not speak about this? Maybe on that channel I will address homosexuality in a relational, generous way. People watch it and then invite people then to go engage my longer form videos on YouTube in which I talk about those issues in some real depth. Now, I realize there's questions of free speech and not being silenced. I understand all of that. I'm trying to play within the system for effectiveness. But I'm always asking myself, am I stopping speaking truth because of that? That's a very careful thing to keep in mind and just manage. So speak truth, but do it wisely with a big goal in mind. Jesus would have spoken truth. Now, a fourth thing Jesus would do is he would be motivated by love. Now, that seems obvious, but Jesus would be motivated by love. Think about Zacchaeus. People had every reason to think he should not be reaching out to Zacchaeus. Think about Mark chapter 2 when he was eating with sinners and tax collectors. He wanted to show love to people. That's his goal. You see, love is other-focused. It's other-focused. That's what Jesus did. Sometimes on social media, it can become self-focused. Platform for me. Look at me. Jesus spoke through love. So when we're on social media, we have to ask ourselves, what is the most way to show the greatest love to another person? When I see Christians doing mean comments, that just shuts down conversation. So Jesus would be motivated by love. And the last thing is Jesus might surprise us who he engaged. He might surprise us who he engaged. People were upset Jesus talked with sinners. Mark chapter 2, that he talked with Zacchaeus. So Jesus might surprise us. I've had a few guests on and taken flack at time on my YouTube channel, and I've put posts, but I want to reach out of my comfort zone and engage people with a different worldview and show them that Christians are different. That Christians can be gracious, Christians can be thoughtful, and maybe break down some barriers so these people might consider the claims of Christ. There's ways to do it well, there's ways to do it not so well. I hope this video has been encouragement to you. God bless in your efforts to equip Christians and reach the lost.
All right, so that was the video by Sean McDowell. I don't know how much you caught. Let me just give you a very quick recap. So Sean McDowell suggested to us how Jesus might use social media. Well, firstly, Jesus would communicate with stories. Sean McDowell said stories are powerful, stories rivet us, they can be retold easily, and they are persuasive. right? And he also thinks that Jesus would ask a lot of questions. He would ask thought-provoking questions so that people can digest for themselves. Jesus would engage people with a small following. He would speak truth, and he would be motivated by love, right? Caring for individuals and being focused on them. And I thought something interesting that Sean McDowell also gave us a tip on, to know what is your mission statement. I thought that was cool because how many of us really think about, oh, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. You don't think about having a mission statement, but I think that's something that could really change the way that we post if we actually think about it. So for him, he says that discipleship is his main goal with a secondary aim of evangelism, right? So he would ask himself, does this advance my mission or not? And then he would decide whether to post on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. Okay, so now we want to come back to our panel, right? So on our panel, we have Edric, the editor of Thirst, the Thirst Collective. We have Gerald, he's a final year student in NYP. We have Shanice, she is also a final year student in SMU. And for Cornelius, he's a young working professional in the marketplace. So we want to hear from them also. Okay, guys, how are you using social media intentionally? Yeah, what platforms are you active on and what kind of content do you post? Okay, let's hear from the youngest to the oldest. Gerald.
Oh, when you say youngest, I was like, oh no. Okay, hi guys. Yeah. So, on social media, I mean, I'm primarily active on Instagram. For me, I guess I like to post things that provoke thought, not necessarily only to Christians, but just generally, I want to post things that provoke thought, that gets people thinking like, oh, I never thought about this. Maybe we could be doing this, maybe there's stuff like that. So for me, what's really on my heart to post on, and what I mostly post on, is like unity in the body of Christ, revival, about church, about evangelism, and also maybe about a bit about apologetics sometimes, just get that plant that small seed in people's head and be like, oh yeah, this is something interesting to think about. So yeah, that's what I mainly do.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you, Gerald. Shanice.
Hi everyone, I'm Shani. So I'm from SMU, and like Gerald, I'm primarily active on Instagram. But the thing is, I don't have my own personal Instagram account. Instead, I'm active on SMU Crew's Instagram account. So shout out to at SMU Crew _SG. Please follow us. Yeah, because and like what Sean McDowell mentioned, we do have a mission statement, and our primary mission is to connect, engage, and inform the crew community. But at the same time, we hope that our content would be able to reach and evangelize to non-believers as well. Yeah, so that's where I'm mainly active on. Thank you.
Thanks. Colin.
Yep. Hi everyone. My name is Cornelius. So similarly, right now for my own Instagram profile, I'm not really using it for personal kind of postings. I'm mainly using it for because my side gig, I'm doing photography. Yeah, so I'm mainly using it as that. But I would say that one tangible example or experience that I had in using Instagram, using social media to post about God would be very much in crew as well. And when we first started, so I was actually the pioneering batch of starting a crew campus social media ministry. Yeah, and the intention really was to reach out to people, on campus, but at the same time to also unite our crew community together, and to also be a point of contact, to be someone that people can reach out to, Christians who can, for Christians to reach out to if say they are interested in joining our community or in any activities that we host. Yeah, so I would say that was the main front that we were really gunning at.
Okay. Edric.
Yeah, I was thinking there was some mistake when you said youngest to oldest, because I was all ready to unmute myself. But anyway,
Wow.
I'm personally on all of the social media channels. I have to be. I've been in digital media for a long time now. But I think more importantly is for as Thirst, we are wherever we think people are. I think that's more important, and we do it missionally, as Sean McDowell said. We have a mission statement, a vision statement. It says that we are built for digital outreach and discipleship. And when we first started 5 years ago, it said it the other way around: digital discipleship and outreach. But about 2 years ago, I told the team we're going to put outreach, that just the word there first, because we think on social media that's the bigger need right now. That's the bigger opportunity. Christians will talk to Christians in church with or without social media, but social media is our chance to talk to non-Christians. So just personally, we're trying to re-gear ourselves, reimagine what we would look like if we were more outward facing. What would the church look like if we were more intentional about making sure that our primary audience is the unchurched?
Nice. Wow, seems like Edric is the most really like social media savvy out of all the young people over here. Yeah, even for me, I just use Instagram only. For me, it's very lifestyle posts. I post about my boring life, but I talk about like sharing testimonies, I think through like even my family or certain struggles that I have. Yeah, I think that we all have a platform and it's cool if we know how to leverage that. Okay, second question. How do you let the Holy Spirit guide you in what you sing on social media? Anybody?
Why not we just continue with this whole youngest to oldest? I can go. I can go. Yeah, I feel like this is something that has helped me personally think about how to post about things, but also I feel like this is also quite effective and applicable in a real life situation. So okay, I hope I don't overrun here. But okay, so there are three main ways, or at least what I was taught. There's pathos, ethos, and logos. So if you don't know what that is, pathos is kind of like an appeal to like your character, ethos is an appeal to emotions, and logos is an appeal to facts. And when we look at what Jesus did, right, I think like I really agree with Sean. He's incredible at communicating stuff with people. And for me, I think about it in that way, right? So maybe start with like ethos, like emotionally appeal to them. You know, how can I empathize with like your struggles or what you're going through? And logos, you know, as I appeal to like God's word, like you know, I also want to be biblically sound as I talk about these things, not just like I anyhow pull it out and then like, oh, like say this from the Bible. And also pathos lah, my own walk, like am I really living out the truth that I'm proclaiming? I think the second thing that also I think about is how can I best package something to someone that they can understand best. Like I think another way that Jesus was a great communicator is that he says to the Jews that I am the good shepherd. So we think about it, why does he say I am the good shepherd to the Jews? Because they understand what it's like being a shepherd. And I think in the same way, right, like Paul also talked about how he was a Jew to the Jews so that he can reach out to the Jews, and many other things. So I feel like in that way, right, how can we best package something, right? Not losing the essence of truth, but really just maybe sometimes like changing some of the phrasing of some of the words, and how can we best package it that someone can understand it. So yeah, those are just my 2 cents.
Wow, you've really thought this through. Very cool, Gerald. Okay, let's change it up lah. Okay, Edric, you are the second youngest. Yeah, why don't you share next?
I'm not sure I can follow up on Gerald. Clearly, he thinks a lot more about these things than all of us combined. But I think the question of how do we let the Spirit guide us on what we see on social media is a subset of the question of how do we let the Holy Spirit guide us, full stop, or question mark, which is probably the bigger question here. If we're only thinking about the Holy Spirit in terms of being our editor or our filter for social media, but it's really more about the rest of our life. How filled are we with the Holy Spirit? How filled are we with the Word of God, such that in whatever circumstance, that is what comes out of us naturally, whether it's a social context, physical face-to-face gatherings, or it's social media. So I think that's probably the bigger part of the bigger question. Like honestly, how spirit filled is our conversation, is our thought process, etc. Just one specific thing to draw to mind, of course, with social media is we need to be audience conscious. So I think if there's one thing that's good to ask the Holy Spirit, like maybe you want to ask, who might be reading this, who might be listening to this, because for an audience of Christians, you might say certain things with knowing that there's a certain knowledge base. But for people out there who may not know Jesus, you might want to think about how do those things get phrased differently. I think Gerald puts it well, in such a manner that is accessible to the person listening, in such a manner that a non-Christian without biblical background, without a clue about Jesus and who he is, will still understand the essence of what you're saying. So I think that's where the Holy Spirit will guide us.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point that it's not just about how does the Holy Spirit guide us on social media, but just in general in our lives, right? That whatever we post on social media is an overflow of what you naturally would say in a face-to-face conversation because you are so filled with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Like for me, I think about whatever I am posting, right? It's not just oh, I want to say this, and then like I want people to see like what I'm going through, and then oh, let's also as a side note, how can God be mentioned in this, right? He's not like an afterthought, but He is the reason why I would be posting something, right? So yeah, that's a question that I ask myself. Like, what do I want people to know about God through this post? Yeah, so there must be like an end story or some sort, so that people feel encouraged, and it must be real. I feel like, I mean, on social media, we always know people like to put like their picture perfect shots, online, and we know that's not real. Yeah, because everybody goes through like really really tough times, right? So yeah, I'm of the opinion that we don't necessarily always have to post like really terrible stuff and then just like, oh, but God be praised. I mean, unless of course that's very you, right? But there's a balance of like good stuff and like struggles that we go through, but just very vulnerably sharing like how God lifts you through all of that. I think that's natural and that's powerful. How about Colin?
Yeah, I think I can really add on to Edric's sharing, which is that I feel that there are times that when there are interesting topics to talk about or something that's really exciting, or I would say thought provoking, it is we are most often led with this impulsive desire to quickly talk about it, to quickly bring it out on social media. And I think it's really important in such times that we actually take a step back to think about what actually does God want us to do, and to really take time to pray, to humble ourselves, to align ourselves to the Spirit. I think at the core of it, aligning ourselves to the Holy Spirit and desiring the Holy Spirit to empower us is on social media is not very much different from how we live our Christian lives daily. And as well as when we do when we do any form of Christian ministry. Yeah, I think it's with this humble remembrance that it is God who gives life. It is God who performs the regenerative work, and that we are vessels of His grace in doing so. So I think that personally for me, whenever I do catch myself and I do my best to try to listen to what to where the Holy Spirit is leading, I'm very much amazed by the creativity that sometimes I'm empowered by, as well as the relatability that sometimes I can employ in my conversations with people or in the contents that I post. Yeah, so I think that very much so. My personal take is that the more that actually you draw closer to the Spirit daily in your own personal life, the more endearing, the more enjoyable, the more fun, the more exciting, the more empowering it is to see it manifest in ministry or even in the social media posts that you do post.
Thanks, Colin. Shanice?
Yeah, I was actually quite happy I didn't have to go like right after Gerald. But I do agree with what Pastor Edric shared, that like this question is ultimately about how does the Holy Spirit lead us in our daily life. So I think being active on Instagram through social media, SMU crew, is a privilege because I get to work with a marketing team of 6 people, and they help to keep me accountable, as iron sharpens iron. So it can help me to make sure that my posts actually conform to our mission statement. And instead of advancing my own desires, I'm advancing the kingdom of God by sticking to our mission statement of evangelizing and connecting our community. So going back to that, what shapes SMU Crew's Instagram is also the fact that we're founded on Exodus 35, the word of God, which says that God is the giver of skill and ability in all forms of creative work. And so going back to using the word, the word is the sword of the Spirit that's sharper than any two-edged sword and helps us to not only be offensive, but also be defensive. So one verse that I hold strongly to when I'm using social media is actually Romans 12:2, which is, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And this verse has really helped me direct my social media strategy, which is why I actually stopped using my personal account, because I felt that it was making me more conformed to the world instead of spending time with God, which is what Con mentioned, and going back to Joshua 1 verse 8, God wants us to meditate on His word day and night so that we might be careful to do everything that's written in it, that we might be able to find success and prosper. And I realized that social media was one of the stumbling blocks, especially my personal account in my life, that would stop me from spending time with the word, which was so necessary. So I think, just being able to hold on to the word as the sword of the spirit, something that's able to help me shape my own personal social media strategy.
Thanks for sharing that, Shanice. Yeah, I think we are getting a sensing that there's a lot of thought that has to go into it about how is it how you want to communicate, but how is it also affecting you, and are you also getting distracted from the Lord Himself, right? Wow, these are really good stuff. All right, now we're just gonna go into Q&A. Thank you for the questions that have been pouring in. Please keep them coming, and please scroll through and like upvote the ones that you really like, okay? So that we make sure that we cover the questions that everybody is dying to hear. Okay, the first one. Okay, I saw this. As someone on social media, have you gotten any hate comments? And if you have, how have you dealt with it? Wow, this is a really good one.
Okay, maybe I just jump in here as the most public social media platforms. I will go so far as to say that while we don't go out and try to be a lightning rod and seek persecution and seek controversy, I'll go so far as to say that if you're not getting some degree of backlash or flag every now and then, I'm not sure how much Jesus is on your feet, because it is quite clearly stated in the Bible, Jesus's own words, that people will hate you because you love him. Now, of course, we don't. The gospel will be offensive to some, but we don't go out of our way to be offensive. We have had cases where we put up. I think we had one very famous situation where, without going into more details, we had a pastor comment about modest dressing in church, and we had a lot of backlash from that. We had 3,000, 4,000 comments. A lot of angry ones, some supportive ones. To be honest, a lot of people who knew us and knew the pastor, even the people on my team, they were quite shaken by that. We're like, oh no, does the world hate us? And we just need a clear conscience before God. Is what was said out of the word of God? And if so, if that's what they are upset by and offended by, then we spoke the truth in love, and that's all we can do about it. One of the ways I phrase this is that sometimes suffering for Jesus's sake, the persecution, that's a spiritual compliment, in the sense that, well, you're doing something for God. A lot of people will never get that kind of backlash because they're not doing anything meaningful for God. And sometimes we just have to roll with that and trust that God will have your back, that He will be your vindicator if need be. And then we move on from there. One of our core values in the Thirst Collective is we say we're not here to please men. We're not here to appease men. We're here to please God. And I think we need to hold fast by that in our public communication. Of course, not going out of our way to rub things in people's noses and just purposely go and disturb people.
Wow, that is a really cool perspective. Yeah, we're not here to appease men, we're here to please God. And so true. And to see it as a spiritual compliment. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else want to give a response to this? Any hate comments or not so kind ones?
I can go next, cause I mean, if you ask any of my friends, they probably know how much controversy I've gone through, and I mean I've made some mistakes. I mean I think that's a question later, so I'll save it. I think that us as a community, let's support one another on this, because like an online space can often get very toxic and very nasty, with like a lot of people that disagree. It's like oh, you disagree, that I hate you, and many things like that lah. And I mean, as much as we try to do things out of love, I mean we're human, and sometimes the words don't really come out the best and something like that. I think there are two things that I have. One of them is humility. Sometimes it is indeed that we did really phrase it in a good way, and just be humble, learn from it. But second, I can really relate to the hurt, because personally people have not only DM'd me, but like I've heard a lot of things behind my back said about me, quite a lot of places, and it really really is hurtful. I think the thing that did encourage me the most is when people texted me and people came to me say, Gerald, don't stop posting, because what you're doing is the work of the Holy Spirit. You are advancing the kingdom of God by doing this, and I felt so encouraged because it's as if, you know, like I'm just reminded Second Timothy, like this is a book that I'm also reading. Then I remember how Paul says to Timothy, therefore do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord, nor of me as prisoner, but share in the suffering of the gospel by the power of God. I think that us as believers, right, let's encourage one another. Like if you see someone, right, and you see, you know, like they're posting something, encourage them, like say, hey dude, awesome, like I support that, good job bro, like I love you for doing this. I feel like that really goes a long way, and I can like testify to the effects of that because very few people did that to me, but it really went a long way, and I still continue to post because I'm encouraged. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing such a personal story, Gerald. Yeah, it must be really hard when people say this kind of things towards you. On that note, right, I thought it was cool that you said it's important to you when people like message you and encourage you also, that positive voice to say keep going. And on that related note, so how can or should the body of Christ respond? Yeah, like Edric, you mentioned about that post. Yeah, I think a lot of us saw that. Like, what do you suggest could be a good way to respond? Should we also, like, in the comment section also add like our public like encouragement, or should it be like a private message so that we like don't draw so much attention?
I think we need to be conscious that when we're in the public square, everything we say is read by believers and non-believers, pre-believers. And I think what happens very often for Christians is we tend to degenerate into a in-house conversation. But we have to remember that the whole thread is a chance for us to spread the gospel. Every engagement with a pre-believer is a chance for you to reflect the light of Jesus somehow. So I think that's the main posture we need to take going to these things. Some there is a point where they are scoffers and mockers, and we don't sit in that seat, and we just gently remove ourselves from that conversation. But I think what we do is we try to look with a little bit of discernment about those who are in those, even some of the haters, but they are hating out of a real place of hurt, let's say. And maybe there is a conversation to be had there, or maybe there is a myth that we need to demystify about the faith and about our God. We need to kind of be able to discern, read between the lines, see through spiritual lenses, and see those who might be there to have a real conversation. We have one guy on our team who's really good at doing this, and he just goes really intentional into conversations, some on our platforms, the online, etc., some on in his personal feeds, and he just goes in there and just sees if there is a way that he can say something redemptive, something edifying, something that encourages, that builds people up. First Corinthians 14:3, right? Which is a positive reflection of God into their life, and that's him sowing. So I think we need to not shy away from every battle, discern which are the battles we need to be in, and discern which are the battles that we need to pull out of for the sake of the gospel. And from there, always try to figure out what is the winsome witness approach to that public square conversation.
All right, thank you for that. All right, next question. Some people might feel that Instagram isn't the platform for chunks of text, which might make it more difficult to bring a message across. Has this ever been an issue for you all, and how do you circumvent it?
Perhaps I can go because as a comms major in class, we actually learn a lot about how different types of social media platforms are suitable for different types of content. So I think what this viewer asked was very apt. Instagram definitely isn't a place for long chunks of text that might be more appropriate for places like Facebook or YouTube. Instagram is where we really have a very curated feed, right? We all try to present our best selves. All our photos are highly edited, and it's really where it reflects the age of instant gratification. People spend less than 6 seconds on a single post. And if you don't catch their attention by a stunning visual, you're just going to lose them. So I think as Christians, we can use that knowledge to consider what types of content we're sharing on Instagram versus maybe like Facebook, Twitter, if you use Twitter, or even Telegram, if you consider that a social media platform. Consider what kinds of content work on certain platforms and use that to our best advantage. So in school, I also learned about Freudian's theory of like personality. There's like super ego, it, and ego itself. So where Instagram conforms to your super ego, your very curated self, YouTube is a place where you present your subconscious self. So YouTube is more suitable for like long form content. If you're comfortable with vlogging, sharing about your life, you could consider that kind of long form content. And there's also different kinds of strategy like transmedia, social media strategy, where you draw people to your different channels through different checkpoints. So like, for example, you could also post that long form content on Instagram, but you don't use Instagram as the main platform to disseminate your long form videos. Instead, you direct them to your YouTube channel or your TikTok channel if you have one. Yeah.
Wow, sounds like you have to use a whole combination of it. Anybody else? Something to add?
I just want to say that I don't think I've ever used anything I studied in school in a Christian context. That's amazing. It's great.
All right. Okay, next question. Okay, let me see. How do I have a mission statement that is both on exhorting and encouraging the Christian community while also reaching out to non-Christians? Is it possible to hit the best of both worlds? Con, any thoughts?
I feel that regarding to your own personal mission statement, as per any ministry that you have, even for social media, it is something that is very much, it should be conceived from your relationship with God. I think that that is the most endearing place that your spiritual mission statement can be birthed out from. In your walk with God, definitely there'll be explorations of which, what kind of burdens that God has shared with you, that are on His heart with you, and from there you'll be able to get a better idea, a better inkling of what your overarching mission statement should be. Yeah, but definitely, I would say that like what Sean McDowell shared just now, that maybe for different ministries that you have on hand, for different channels that you have, there can be different mission statements. Of course, maybe because there are different users for different channels. Yeah.
All right, all right. Gerald, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I love to reach out to both like non-Christians and Christians on this, right? So again, I think for me it's like I like to post things that are very thought-provoking, that really regardless of whether you're Christian or not Christian. Okay, maybe I feel one practical thing is maybe you remove the Christian jargon, or what I would like to call, like, if you don't need to Christianize a word, then don't need to Christianize. It's like all these type of things, right, that we hear in church, right? Let's reduce that, right? Because in the end we want that person to understand it. Okay, but back to I like to post thought-provoking things. So for example, right, actually, right, I was part of something called Reaping the Harvest, and it was like a student panel thing, and then I also like reposted it on my Instagram, and then I put a part, and then I said like, where like I don't believe that people, when they say they have no time, what they're really saying is that like, I don't prioritize this, and I say it's okay, but where you spend your time really shows where your heart is. And like something as simple as that, then actually a few non-believers like approached me. They were like, oh, that's actually very interesting, I never thought about it in that way. And then we just engaged in a convo, as well as some Christians. So yeah, to me it's like posting things that us as all of us as humans can relate lah. So yeah.
Okay, that's really good advice. Thank you. Next question. I find that it gets challenging when we have a wide range of audience, example, the age group in the church. Sometimes we wish to use some Gen Z lingo, but it might not come out as engaging for the more elderly generations in the church. Any good guide or starting point, or even creative ways to go about crafting a content or writing a caption, please? You could share an experience that might have turned out well also. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm the newsman. I've been writing captions all my life, which has been quite long. Unfortunately, the main point here is you got to know your audience. You have to know your audience. You always scope whatever you're writing for your primary audience, or at least your intended audience. If, for example, you are on your Instagram, you will know roughly what your Instagram readers, their age group, and who they are. And or if you are speaking invited to whatever speaking platform you're on, you will look around and you will read the room, and you will know their general age group. You won't be able to hit everyone and please everyone, but you want to try to hit broadly as many people as you can with your lingo, with your narrative, with your style. right? So that really is it. So for example, for Thirst, how we write something on Instagram will be a bit different from how we write it for Facebook, and that will be tweaked for how it's written for Telegram. Meanwhile, over at Salt and Light, for example, it will look and sound quite different. What I often tell people is when I'm in a room, like for example right now, representing Thirst, I tend to be the oldest person in the room. But when I'm in the room for a Salt and Light event, I might be the youngest person in the room. Accordingly, I'll skew or steer how I speak accordingly, how I dress accordingly. So read your audience and tailor what you're saying towards their lingo, their narrative, their generation.
Wow. Okay, true. So you need to know which platform has what kind of a target audience generally on that. Okay, anybody else wants to weigh in on this question?
Perhaps I could like bring in a marketing perspective again. I think what Edric shared is really on point. Even in marketing, we have to do market segmentation before we go in to target that specific audience, because that's the most efficient way. No business can target all consumer segments, right? So I think having that knowledge is really important. But at the same time, I think it's so important to know that we are not using social media to please men. We're not here to conform to the world, to conform to the world's values. We're here to love the people on social media, but not love their value system. So I would say as a Christian, it's almost impossible in that sense to please everyone. So that shouldn't be our approach, but rather a more effective approach would be to know really what our mission statement is, like what Sean McDowell encouraged us to have, and make sure that our mission statement is authentic to who we are. It would be really weird, right, if like an old person tries to use Gen Z lingo. You can tell, right, that person is trying too hard, and then that wouldn't reach anyone at all. So yeah, just know your audience and be true to yourself. Yeah.
So true. I feel called out right now. Okay, next question. Okay, how do we know how much of vulnerability on social media is too much? Are there any practical guidelines to that? Interesting. Coin.
I think I tend to be someone who's quite guarded with sharing content that's too vulnerable. So I give my take on this. I think what we can do is firstly to of course think through the content that we want to post in the perspective of our audience. How would they receive it? But most importantly is to also understand what is God's heart. If there is really actually something vulnerable that He wants us to communicate. Yeah, so there are times that will call for that. But also at the same time, it is always good to also surround yourself with a crowd of counselors, right? Who can a crowd of counsel who can really just read through the content that you would like to post and to let you know what their thoughts are. Yeah, so I think the beauty of the community of Christ is really that there are people who are very supportive in the same overarching goal that you have in wanting to promote Christ to people, and they very much will give very constructive feedback on the kind of content that you would like to post. Yeah, so definitely like having that community will help along the way. But at times, if God really calls you to share something more personal, more vulnerable, or even something controversial that you're not comfortable with, then that definitely calls for another form of leap of I would say faith journey with God. Yeah.
Okay, can I just jump in with a couple of scriptures to just guide our footsteps on this one? One is the one I mentioned earlier, 1 Corinthians 14:3. What we post should encourage, should equip, should edify, should comfort. At the same time, 2 Corinthians 6:11 to 2 Corinthians 6:11 talks about as you open your heart, as you speak freely, other people respond freely as well. So somewhere between these two probably will inform just how vulnerable you are. Sometimes that vulnerability is done so that someone else opens up. Sometimes that vulnerability is done in such a manner that it edifies, it equips, it comforts, it encourages. So just be conscious of the end goal. And what happens a lot of times is vulnerability is just rawness. And I've seen people even on stage, they share very vulnerably, but the end result of that is it potentially can drag people down, right? So we want to be a little bit conscious of that. Sometimes we do that because in that rawness, it opens up hearts, it opens the doors to conversation. So we do need to be a little bit focused on that. And if honestly we're sharing vulnerably from a place of real hurt, where honestly it's a cry for help, then hopefully someone will respond to you with some necessary help. So we have to calibrate where we come from with when we go onto that public square, when we're speaking in the public square as Christians.
Right. Thank you. I take my cue from King David. In a lot of the Psalms, he's super vulnerable. But something I learned from him is how he also, no matter how grim it is, he wraps it up with, but yet my hope is in the Lord. Yeah, but not that we always have to end with a silver lining. Like Edric said, if it's a cry for help, so hopefully somebody responds to you. But I have seen also in how I chose to be vulnerable, there were people who messaged me and shared their own story of something very similar, and we got to journey with each other. Yeah, so I do reread like whatever I'm about to post, and I pray. And if there's peace, I know that it's not drawing attention to myself, but really it's about God, then I will post that. Yeah. Okay, let's go for one last question. Okay, if you see someone posting false witness or bad apologetics or hate, basically just giving Christians a bad name, what would you do? Would you call them out? Wow, tough.
Okay, this calls for a lot of wisdom. I think that I mean, I guess the safest bet is Matthew 18. If your brother sins against you, go to him in private and tell him. I feel like this is still applicable. Like one thing that I see at large, and like I see this more in, say, the United States, that like a lot of people, there's a lot of false content lah, and I see a lot of Christians calling out, but in a very ungracious way, in a way that's very antagonizing. And yeah, like people are watching, like Pastor Edric said, like non-Christians and Christians are both watching this. We can't be like shooting like this. So I think that I don't think, I mean, right now what I'm saying, I don't think it's wise to say a definite yes or no, to like call them out publicly or whatever. I feel like these call for different situations. But I think the first thing that I probably would do is start praying for this person first, then maybe see if I can engage this person on a personal level. Because yes, like a lot of people have been hurt by the church, so me calling this person out might just add more fuel to the fire, and might just worsen the relationship. So I'll just see it on a personal level, like, hey, like, as I think Sean McDowell also talked about it earlier, how you ask questions, like ask that person, I'm just curious, like, why do you think this way, like what is it that you think about this, and why, what happened, let me be a listening ear, and actually be a listening ear. Be caring for this person first lah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, cause at the end of the day, I think that it's so easy to assume, oh, this person's a false teacher, this is a heretic, and da 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 da. But I think there's one piece of advice, piece of wisdom that I saw on YouTube, right? This YouTube channel called The Beat by Alan Parr. He said something very interesting. Think about it like this: Jesus, right, was fellowshipping with the Pharisees. Think about it in 21st century. Imagine, right, someone takes out a phone, takes picture of that, and posts it on Instagram. See, Jesus is eating with heretics, or Jesus is eating, then that would be like, oh no. Like, so I feel like social media also removes a lot of context to a lot of things that we see. So I I feel like I can't give a very blanket like yes or no, but I feel like the answer is like, be patient, be gracious with it. I would say at the end of the day, I'll leave this hard answer to Pastor Edric, because I feel like he's more qualified to answer it.
By popular demand, please.
There's a really good article that I just read on from Gospel Coalition today. I don't know whether it was published today, but I just read it today. And it's about it's by this will all men know you are my disciples, by the love you have for one another. One of the things we really need to avoid is we need more public arguments, more public airing of dirty linen, dirty laundry, more public examples of how it's true that our denominations really are divisions, etc., etc. So I would say that would be my guiding principle on this one. It will get ugly. It will get doctrine versus doctrine. It'll get two sides quoting verses that are both in the Bible but mean completely different things to both of you. Usually that's a lose-lose kind of scenario. I mean, I can imagine that would be the odd occasion where certain things have to be addressed publicly. But in general, Gerald is absolutely right. Matthew 18 is a very good guiding principle for this. Take it offline. If you know them, directly, pick up the phone and give them a call, cheer them up for coffee. If you don't know them, you can PM them, DM them. If you don't know them, but you can kind of trace, social media is easy to CSI people. You realize, hey, wait a minute, that guy goes to my friend's church. Let me call up their youth leader or whatever. Yeah. So I think you try to do that route, and be really honest. Usually, there's no neat ending to these kind of things. Every now and then there's a good constructive conversation, but I think one thing we can at least try not to do is not to add to that to the bad witness of the church in terms of us being argumentative, prideful, hold fast to our own belief, don't listen to other people. So I think we want to avoid that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you all for the questions. Sorry we ran out of time for Q&A, but we do have 2 more questions that we're going to ask the panel, okay? What are some mistakes you have made on social media? Yeah, as we talk about all these things, yeah, what are some of your personal mistakes? Or if not, what have you observed from some other Christians?
I think I can share mine in 1 minute. Okay, I promise I won't talk so much. But okay, I think that mistakes I made. I mean, I'm just sharing because I think that this is something that I've experienced. That I feel like some people might relate to. That I've done it out of a lot of pride. I'm like, oh, I want to be seen as this Christian guy, and then I also quite a lot of theological pride. It's like, oh, I know this doctrine, I know all these things, right? And then I ended up posting all these things out of pride, and then I wonder that did I really do it, like because once my leader questioned me, why exactly do you post this, and then it was just a curious thing, but I felt like that word just hit me, and I'm like, yeah, why am I posting this? And yeah lah, I guess that's the thing that I try to do. Like every time I before I post, I just pray, like, Lord, like I want to be posting this for your glory and not to advance my own agenda or my own theology. I just want to be doing this for you, Lord. So yeah. And the second thing I think that I've done is not patiently engaging people and extending grace. Like I think I've learned from experience that um social media, right, especially with words, right, if you're not face to face with somebody and you're not like talking with them, right, it really removes a lot of context. And I think that especially I just want to make a plea to like all the Christians, let's have even more grace for people. Like just because someone says something that sounds offensive doesn't mean they necessarily mean that. So let's extend that grace to people. Yeah, because I am a sinner in need of grace. We are all sinners in need of grace. So yeah, let's just extend that grace to people.
Thanks, and Gerald. Colin, anything?
Yes. So I think one thing that I guess I never realized, something that my girlfriend pointed out to me lah, was that when I was still serving within the social media ministry in SMU crew, I had this like mentality that no lah, I shouldn't follow them. Yeah, they should follow me first. Like, I don't know why, but that mentality was there, and quite, I mean, now that I look back, right, it seems a bit off lah. Yeah. Okay, I'm not a bit lah, quite off lah. Yeah. So I think that really humbles me to recognize that really what is our posture before men, right? Where is our identity? And I think understanding the posture that Christ has taken up in Calvary, in his ministry towards people that were ostracized. When the apostles were arguing on who was the greatest disciple, Jesus was there, wrapping a towel around his waist and then preparing to wash his disciples' feet. I think that is really, really the spiritual posture that God desires of us lah, to have. And that itself would be a litmus test for many things. I think one of the questions just now that I would like to also give my input on was on regarding how should we respond to things that we disagree online, right? But I think it's really checking with ourselves what is our intention. Many of the times the impulsion to respond really is from a place of pride, or somewhere or the other we also have put some sense of identity onto what others think of us. But actually, to really relate to them, to really ask them questions would require a posture of a servant or a posture of humility to do so. Yeah, so I would think that that's one of my mistakes lah. Yeah, thinking that people should follow me and me not following them back. Yeah, petty lah, but yeah, it was there. Yes.
Thanks, Con. Shanice?
Okay, so like my biggest mistake that I still do often is to look at Instagram first thing in the morning instead of seeking the Lord. Yeah, and I mean, in a sense, that kind of reflects our God-given desire to have human connection, right? But then that wasn't what Jesus did. So, I mean, this whole panel is about how would Jesus use social media. And we see in Mark chapter 1, verse 35, that Jesus rose early in the morning. The first thing he did was to go to a desolate place and not a populated place, which in today's age would be like social media, to seek like connection with men. But he went there to pray, to commune with God. And that's something I think I can learn because we can see in the following chapters, Jesus, he then, after spending time to pray with God, he was so productive. He fulfilled his ministry of preaching in Galilee. He cast out demons, he healed lepers, and he was so productive. And oftentimes, when I find myself, seeking the approval of men, seeking connection with them, and men can never satisfy my God-given desire to be connected with the perfect man in heaven who's the only one who can fulfill my need for connection perfectly, unlike men. I find myself, caught in the rabbit hole of social media because social media is designed to be very addictive, to be very toxic to the human mind if you're not careful and if you're not intentional. So I think one mistake is that, and I would really love to learn to seek the Lord first before I carry out ministry on social media. Yeah.
Thank you, Shanice. Edric?
Oh, I've been doing social media for so long. I make all kinds of mistakes. The one I see most often is people posting to their public corporate page or whatever, but they post their personal comments. We've all seen that happen. It happened to the best of us, and it's embarrassing. You just pray that it was a benign, boring comment and not something that's gonna get you in trouble. Yep.
Okay, that's true. If you have to toggle between a public one, a corporate one, and a personal one. Okay. Very last question for the night. What kind of positive effects or impact have you seen from your engagement on social media, just to encourage all our audience here today? Okay, let's go backwards. Edric.
I've seen people receive Christ on social media. I've seen people who come in all guns blazing, and after a few words to diffuse the situation and to just engage them, I've seen them come around to the idea that okay, maybe we can have a constructive conversation about this. I've seen people who come in angry, and because they are met with love or with some attempt of empathy and understanding, at the end of a conversation, they are willing to, for example, okay, I'll hear you guys out. I've seen tremendous. I'm just going to give one example that it's not exactly answering the question, but I love this story, so I'm just going to share it. That we have a mission partner in a nearby country. They were given $1,000 US dollars, do anything they wanted to. They posted one question on their social media, one liner which asked, "Have you ever dreamt of a man in white?" They boosted that question for $1,000. By the end of the boost period and a few weeks later, they had something like 800 responses, something like a few couple hundred extended conversations. There's something like a few dozen meetups, and they had a handful of baptisms. Out of that $1,000 boosted on social media, one line question, right? So you never know. You never know. We represent Jesus wherever we are, online, in person, and for a lot of people, social media is their reality. And if you can meet them in that reality of theirs, and sometimes they are faceless for that reason, maybe they're shy, maybe they've been hurt before, and if you can like scrape away under, beyond the front and the facade, you'll find a human under there, and that's when we can try to have human connections where we try to share the gospel.
Wow, thank you for that story. Such a worthy investment, that $1,000. Right. Okay, Shanice.
Yeah, so something really encouraging that happened recently, not by myself or the SME Crew account, but by my discipleship group mate. Her name is Christy. So she's actually on exchange in Poland right now. And so what's happening and what's really topical right now is that in Poland, there's a lot of Ukrainian refugees. And what she did was use her social media account, setting it public to raise funds for these refugees And that's really leveraging the power of social media, because a lot of times social media is about reaching quantity instead of quality, right? And then she was able to garner so much attention on her social media that she eventually got featured on Mothership. Yeah, and that helped her raise even more funds to help the refugees in Poland. So I think that's really a great way to steward your influence on social media. Yeah, and that was something that really encouraged me. Yeah.
Yeah, and she raised so much money that she had to make multiple trips. And then she would deliver them personally to the refugees and actually talk to them. So I think, yeah, that's really, really powerful. Thank you. Colin.
Yeah, I think for me it would really be that amidst the noise of this world, we can be a voice of truth. We can be a voice of edification to the many who are on social media. And I think that is very precious. That is definitely us being salt and light on social media and in a very much virtual public space. And I think we also I have seen a lot of testimonies or friends who were personally very encouraged by some Christian posts, especially of course even though some of them are Christians but unbelievers as well. Yeah, so I think sometimes we don't know the impact that we can have. We might not see the result immediately. It's not really by the click-through rates that we're able to experience these things. But I think just being faithful, just being obedient and being led by the Spirit really, really sometimes does wonders. I think it also can help us to employ the level of relatability that we would want to have with our target audiences. And what I mean by this is that there are times that we could actually we could build some form of good impression of what our faith is, of who Jesus is on social media. And it will actually get some conversations going, right? People will start to think, oh, actually, with some content on apologetics, oh, actually Christians, they do think of these things, and they're not afraid to answer or to face hard questions. And I think this sometimes has quite positive fruits in helping to create conversations with others and potentially having some form of spiritual conversations.
Nice. Okay, Gerald.
Yeah. So Pastor Edric started a story, I'll also end on a story. So I think this will be an encouragement, especially to those who are persecuted. So right, for me, I mean, other than meaningful conversation, I was able to lead one person to Christ. And then at the end of the day, I talked to her. Then I was like, hey, actually, how do you know my Instagram? It's quite funny. She said, I heard so much gossip and nonsense talked about you by my classmates in school that I had to find out who you were. And then in the end, we started talking and I led her to Christ. So I think that can be an encouragement to everyone, right? That even though, right, like, somehow, some way, the Holy Spirit works in miraculous ways and somehow he brings that person to us. And, when we speak with boldness, the Holy Spirit does the work and all glory goes to him. So don't be afraid because these type of things just happen.
Wow, that is super cool. That whatever the evil one used for evil, God turned it around for good. Amen. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Edric, Gerald, Shanice, and Con, for sharing with us so much. I think your stories really inspire us, and I hope all our hearers today, we feel a little bit more empowered, to use our social media, to share the stories of God. Remember, Pastor Edric said, right? If you're not getting any flag, maybe it's because you're not posting anything that really people get to hear about Jesus, right? Okay, not that we're out there looking for it, but we will not be easily discouraged. Yeah, I think really hearing their stories of how they bounce back, how it is inevitable to really sometimes get unwanted attention, unwanted nasty comments. Yeah, but I like how they also think about, but this is also a person with a story. This person may be hurt, and if we choose to overlook that offense, and actually reach out to them to learn where they're coming from, hey, maybe we can win a friend and somebody into the kingdom of God. All right, so that brings us to the close of our webinar tonight. Please do not leave yet. I have a couple of good stuff to share with us to leave you as a follow-up. And also a very big shout out to Pastor Edric, who is right now typing personal responses in the Q&A. So for those of you who posted, maybe you can check it out. Maybe Pastor Edric has personally given you the answer that you need. Okay, so thank you for hanging out with us. Where do we go from here? So we encourage you to visit crew.sg/ready. So this is part of the hashtag ready campaign. This is a page filled with free and excellent resources in this area of outreach. And I just want to highlight 3 upcoming events under this campaign that you can consider being part of. The first one, remember I mentioned there's this digital day of outreach that is happening next Saturday, 9:30 to 12 p.m. in person at the Crew Center. So it's a fun and simple event that helps us intentionally reach out to our friends, family, and others online. Number 2, there's an arts festival entitled Behold, which is launching this Friday until 17th April. So this is a very special collaboration with hashtag Ready by a group of Christian creatives. So the theme is beauty and brokenness, and each of these artists have given their personal response in the shape of exhibited artworks, workshops, performances, amongst other forms of creative expression. And the best thing is this exhibition is free. So please go check that out. There's an arts festival entitled Behold. Lastly, there's another webinar that's going to be happening next Tuesday night, 8 to 9:30 p.m. called Digital Outreach Made Simple. So this covers tips on how to live your life on mission and 5 questions that you can ask to initiate conversations. You can also sign up for that if you are interested. So all of this information can be found at the hashtag ready website, which is crew.sg/ready, crew.sg/ready. With that, we just want to say thank you for being with us tonight at this webinar, How Would Jesus Use Social Media? Feel free to leave us your comments in the chat, hang around to see whether your Q&A gets answered. Let us know what spoke to you. And with that, we wish you a good night, and let's get talking about our faith. Bye!
My fingers are tired.
Sorry?
My fingers are tired. I've got through everyone who has had at least two thumbs up. So
Oh man, thank you, man. This is gold.